In this podcast, we chat about the draw to Stoke, the defeat to Reading, Boro's poor start. We look ahead to Swansea and answer your podcast questions. This is the Boro Breakdown podcast, and this is our Boro Matchday Chatter in a pod.
Wants support. Curtis Fleming is there on the edge of the area. Fleming for Craig Hignett. Hit it, Higgy. Higgy hits the treble!
Ravanelli coming alive again. Juninho wants the ball played to him. Ravanelli spots out Emerson!
Hello and welcome to the Boro Breakdown podcast with Johnny, Dana and Tom. The Boro podcast that gives you all of your Boro Matchday Chatter in a podcast. And just before we start this week, I just want to give a little push to the Football Content Awards. We're up for the best podcast in the EFL, and if you think we're the best podcast in the EFL, fill in the form. It's in the description below on our YouTube channel and on the podcast apps as well. Just simply go on the link, put Boro Breakdown in the best podcast EFL box, and then submit it. And you never know, we could be the best podcast in the EFL. But let's talk about the Boro now. And a draw and a defeat saw Boro drop to 23rd in the championship table with 3 points from 5 games and no wins. Now, the last time Boro failed to do so was 2003-2004. And that, do you know what year that was? The year we won the Carling Cup. And that's after that, we did go on to lose 2 in 16 games after that poor start, and that was from Boro Farm on Twitter, who tweeted us that. But guys, it's been an emotional roller coaster this week. You know, the heights and the highs and the lows probably of Stoke midweek, and then the performance yesterday, Tom, which I'm sure you will be very, very happy about in just a moment. But Dana, how are you feeling in as many words as you want?
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one because after the Stoke game, I was quite optimistic, and I tweeted out after the game that I saw enough in that match to be really happy and excited for when this team clicks. And then I said in brackets, because it will. And then the game yesterday just made me question that and made me feel really deflated and really disappointed and confused as well, because I kind of look at this Middlesbrough team and I don't recognise it anymore. There was so many good parts of our play last season that have kind of gotten away from us this, and it just feels very odd. We're in a very strange moment at the moment, and I'm hoping that we can get through it. It almost feels like we're taking steps back to take steps forward in a way, so it's a bit strange, but yeah, hopefully this can be put aside and we can get the victory against Swansea, because my God, we need it. We
definitely do. Tom, how are you feeling?
Dana just said deflated there, and I think that's definitely my word of the day. I'm tired after yesterday. It was a long day going to Reading and back, and just seeing that shocking performance. I think very similar to Dana. I was optimistic after the Stoke game. I did think we should have won that game, and just to concede in like a lapse of concentration at the end, and then, you know, taking that into Reading yesterday on the way there, I thought this either going to go one of two ways. Either we're going to get the win because we have possibly deserved a win in a couple of games we've had, early on this season, or, you know, Reading are going to carry the momentum from midweek over and batter us. But in the end, both teams were poor and we just didn't turn up. So very, very frustrated after that.
Okay, then, both deflated. I could probably echo what you're saying as well. I think the performance against Stoke was really good, and we'll come on to that in just a moment. And then Reading performance, you know, you wanted something, you wanted a bite, you wanted something to really go at. And I thought we were going to put in a really big performance against Reading, and it didn't materialise whatsoever. Me predicting 3-0, and obviously we were never ever going to score 3-0 because we could be playing now and we'll never score. But I think deflated is probably the keyword for the short term. I think longer term, when I'm looking at the signings we're making and looking what we're trying to do on a longer term scale, I am thinking it's going to be, the future is always going to be brighter, but it's just a case of we need the right now to really kickstart our season, and then once we kickstart and really get that first one under our belts, I think we will be okay, and I think it'll be a good season for us regardless. And, you know, if it's not this year, I think it'll be next year. But I know it's like, I'm not writing this off at all, but just saying, like, the signings we're making relatively quite young players, look at the like grow them over time. So maybe it could be a next season job, but who knows? Who knows? But I think just deflated in the short term, longer term, I'm fairly decent. But should we look back to Stoke then? Because the Bet365 Boro drew 2-2. Stoke went ahead, and then we equalised through Duncan Watmore of a really, really good goal. And then we went ahead with an own goal, which by Phil Jagielka, but it could have been counted as Duncan Watmore because in the right place at the right time. And then DiMaggio, Wright Phillips, or the regen Wright Phillips, was home to salvage a point for the Potters and deny Boro a first win of the season. Dana, how did Boro not win that game, and how would you assess the performance against Stoke?
Yeah, we drew a 2-1 game, which is probably the best way that I can describe it. And if I say that we lost the game, I apologise. It felt that way. So, from now on, if I reference this as a defeat, I apologise. It just felt like that late sucker punch at the end. It was so frustrating, wasn't it? Because in the first half, in fact, the majority of the game, we just dominated them. And then they obviously stole the goal at the end, snatched the point away from us, and then they got booed off. They got booed off still. So I think that sums up what Stoke fans felt of that performance. They sat back from the get-go. They played like the away side. I tweeted that, and then of course they went up the other end and scored. And that could be a really dangerous part of Boro's game. In possession, we need to be a lot better with it, because on the turnover, we've already been caught out on the counter a couple of times. The first goal that we conceded against West Brom came on the counter-attack. That could be a really dangerous part of our game, a vulnerability of ours. But yeah, we had the opportunities. There were opportunities in the second half. McGree had a few chances, he snatched at them. We threw away a game with a goal in a really pivotal moment. And what I've noticed of Boro, talking about trends and patterns so far this season, we seem to be poor moments. We went poor the majority of that game. We were good, and we deserved to get something out of that game. And then, unfortunately, it's just that one moment where you want Boro to kind of stand up and defend well. We just didn't. And I say we drew a 2-1 game. That was a foul on Isaiah Jones in the build-up to the first, 100%. I know the referee apologised to Wilder after it, but it was so weird because, yeah, people might hone in on the goal that we conceded at the end, but we did play some really good stuff, and I thought we were worthy of getting 3 points out of the game. It's just, as I said, in those moments we need to be good. Defensively, we're just falling so short. Individual mistakes seem to be really problematic for us at the moment.
Tom, how would you echo? Would you echo most of that? And then also, how would you assess it? Because it was a really good performance, wasn't it?
Yeah, I did think it was a good performance. We definitely deserved a win. I think, as Dana just mentioned there, it was for sure a foul on Jones before the first goal. Referee apologised, but doesn't really mean anything after, we can't have the 3 points because of his mistake. But then your lapse in concentration at the end really let us down. But overall, I was much more happy with the performance. I thought this is where we've clicked. We're going to be able to kick on from here. I thought if we carry this performance over into Reading, we'll absolutely play them off the park. And it was just a different team, Boro team that turned up that day. But overall, against Stoke, absolutely deserved the win. I think the one kind of criticism for me is the fact that there was no kind of like gamesmanship towards the end to kind of see that out. We could have done the same thing as Reading did to us yesterday. Could have kept it in the corner, but we were swinging corners into the box within injury time and essentially giving them the ball back. So, I think we need to be a little bit smarter with these games in the future, especially when we're dominating like we do.
It was a little bit naive, wasn't it? Sorry, John. It was a bit naive, but like Wilder said after the game that maybe it was my fault that I didn't put on a Dael Fry or a Tommy Smith. But you can see both sides of the coin, or certainly I can anyway, because it did seem like Boro were in the ascendancy, that they were going to get a third, or at the very least just keep the lead. It didn't feel like at any point we were going to lose that until obviously we did. So I can understand both sides. Obviously, looking back with hindsight, which of course the old cliche is, it's a beautiful thing. Yeah, maybe Wilder could have shut up shop and put a defender on and sort of shored it up at the back. But I think game state matters, and it did feel like Boro were going to push on for that third. But obviously, you kind of left to rue your own mistakes there. And yeah, maybe you could have put on a defender, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and to be honest, I know you both mentioned it there, like the both sides of the coin, you, Dana, and Tom, one about game management. When I was watching the game, I didn't see Boro in any danger whatsoever, dominating the game. I didn't think you needed to put on a Dael Fry or a Tommy Smith. I didn't think we had to see out the game at all. I thought the game was already seen out, and I thought we should have probably scored 3 or 4 or 5 on the night. I just thought it was a really solid performance, and it showed a lot of positives of what we can be and where we can go and what this team can look like maybe in the future, because the movement was really good, the possession was good, it was possession with intent, we were creating good chances and good and high quality chances as well. We just needed the striker to put them away at times. I think also McGree's big chance as well in the second half. And there was just so much of that game which I really enjoyed. And then that typical Boro sucker punch at the end. And I remember sat on this chair and I'm watching it on the TV next to me, and I'm just like, I just sunk, and I was like, well, that is the more. I was like, you know, like Neil Warnock where he did that.
Neil
It was
Warnock,
like
yeah.
I just
Hand
did the
behind his
Warnock,
head.
and it was like, how can you throw away a game like that? But I will come on to like Stoke's equaliser in a second. But Tom, real positives from the game. Obviously, the 19 passes to the goal. The equaliser was really, really good. Boro's second goal was really, really good. Do you think this does, although it was a draw and it was a sucker punch, and yes, the Reading game was poor, but do you think this really does show that there is a lot of positives to take from our performances so far this season, even though points don't reflect that?
I think there's some positives. I think that being we clearly have the ability, we can clearly play good football. But like I say, we just need to be smarter on seeing games out. The pass and play towards the equaliser, patient build up, good finish. It's the type of play we want to see. I think we kept hold of the ball excellently in that build up, and big fan of possession football. I like to see us do that, but it doesn't mean anything when we're not getting the points. So I think it's only a slight positive for me. And like I say, I think we just need to be smarter than we have been in the first few games.
Okay, then. Well, let's talk about Stoke's equaliser then, because Dana, a regen Wright Phillips from absolutely nowhere, as you like to call him. But the Marshall Wright Phillips, he found himself in a really good pocket of space in the box right at the death. But could Boro have done a little bit better there defensively?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it starts with our throw-in in our own half, and the throw-in is actually, it meets a Boro player. It's Paddy McNair that gets his head to it, but he heads it back towards our goal. And then I think it might be Lewis Baker that then wins the second header. Jacob Brown does really well to trap the ball and release it, which, I mean, I'm a big fan of Jacob Brown, by the way. We should put a cheeky deadline day bid in for him because he's a very good player in my eyes. But then it's fine after that because Boro get back into their shape. Ryan Giles is obviously in a position where, yes, the player that's there, I don't know who it is, I apologise for that, but he could obviously get in behind, but I think Waller would be able to cover. But there's a decent line there and it seems very set. They get back into their shape and it appears like we've effectively gotten back into position and stopped an opportunity for Stoke to get in behind. But then what happens is that Lenihan steps into Mark Bowler's space. He steps to the left as Lewis Baker picks up the ball on the edge of the 18-yard box. And it allows Tyrese Campbell to make a run in the space behind Lenihan. And you'll see that gap between Lenihan and Dijksteel gets bigger and it allows for that space to be taken up by Tyrese Campbell with the run that he makes in behind. He just peels off Lenihan, who's obviously, he's got all eyes on Lewis Baker and on the ball. And then much like against QPR, Dijksteel's then caught in between two players. For QPR, it was Lyndon Dykes and Rob Dickey. This time, it's Tyrese Campbell and then DiMaggio Wright Phillips. He makes a second, if you look at his body movement on the goal, he makes a last second, split second decision to attend to Tyrese Campbell instead of DiMaggio Wright Phillips. And obviously, if you watch the goal, the move that sort of starts it off, Dijksteel is with Wright Phillips initially, it's who he's marking. But then he has to change that at the last second because obviously Tyrese Campbell's got the run on Lenihan. And then it just creates this situation where Wright Phillips gets in between Jones and Dijksteel and is allowed the space and the time to head home. It's a really, really poor goal to concede. And obviously, you could say we should never have been in that position from the throw in. The actual throw is fine. As I said, it gets to Paddy McNair. His head just goes straight back to our goal. And yeah, it's just Lenihan is a very aggressive defender from what we've seen. He will step out, he'll try to win the ball back, and he'll try to close down that space. It's something that Andy from Rovers Chat told us when we did the Lenihan breakdown. But sometimes it's at a detriment to us because against West Brom, he did do it and it cost us in behind on the counter-attack. I just feel like maybe he could be a little bit smarter there because I think it's that 1% that you always say, Johnny, that makes that big difference. And Lenihan just stepping out there opens up that gap. It widens that gap between Dijksteel and Lenihan himself. And then Dijksteel has to make that decision. They keep doing Dijksteel dirty, I swear down, because that's the second time he's been caught in between now. Yeah, it's just a really, really crap goal to concede. And of course, it's probably the smallest player on the pitch that scores it as well. Yeah, memories of J Tab, which is not a great memory at all.
Not at all. But I think with that goal at the end as well, I think Jones could do a little bit better there. It looks like he switches off ever so slightly, which also doesn't help. I think when you go back to that first graphic where you look at the second graphic, then I think where it was the back four, back five. I think it's I think it's essentially a 4v4 really when you want to look at it. I think the player coming in behind who's in front of Giles. Then also you can move Bowler along. Lenihan can move along, and then Jones can be again move in again. So you've still got a very narrow line there. And again, that probably wouldn't lead to an offensive probably opportunity for Stoke. But again, like you can look at this and look at a still image and dissect it and say this could be that better, this could be that better. But end of the day, they've switched off at a key moment in the game and they've been great for 99% of it. And that 1%, they switched off. And that's how the draws materialised. And I think Tom, I know Wilder was saying that we could have had an apology from the referee. I mean, yeah, it's all well and good, isn't it? I mean, but we haven't got the points that we deserved because of just a simple error.
Yeah, definitely. I think, as I said earlier, it doesn't really mean a lot, that apology after the game, where the ref's admitting he's made a mistake, but it's already cost us within the game, and we cost ourselves it at the end as well. As I said earlier, like a lack of game management. I think you need to be aware of that situation. As you said, we never looked in danger of conceding. We were always on the ascendancy, but with 2 minutes left in injury time, you've got the 3 points in the bag pretty much. You may as well just see it out rather than go for a third. I think that is the smarter way of doing it. But we definitely were cost by the referee and having to come back from a 1-0 deficit in the first place.
Okay, then. I think if you're a Stoke fan as well, you're disappointed with the performance. I think they got beat to Sunderland yesterday as well, and things are looking a bit gloomy in Stoke at the moment. But we'll soon see if Michael O'Neill gets the sack or not, and see if he fights another day. Ben Rowley, who we speak to from the YYY files, thinks he's going to move upstairs as more of a head of football role, and then I think Dean Holden is set to take over. That was the expected changes that could potentially be made at Stoke, so something to keep an eye on that front if you're a Championship follower. But let's look ahead. Let's look back to Reading now. See what I mean? I'm trying to get rid of it out of my head straight away. But it was a second game in a week on our travels, and the Royals were on a high after beating Blackburn earlier in the week, and they were kept on cloud nine by beating Boro 1-0, courtesy of a goal from Tyrese Fowler in the 28th minute. Wilder made 2 changes from the draw against Stoke with Fry and Forster coming in. Dael Fry hooked at half-time again, playing right centre-back. Thoughts on the Fry situation, because he was very, very good last year, that central figure in defence. This season, he just seems to have a bit of a stuttering start. But what's your thoughts on the situation with Fry, but also what do you think is his best position?
His best position is in the centre of a back three. It's definitely not on the right. And I was just mystified, really, as to why you've got Lenihan, who we've been told by many Blackburn fans is good at bringing the ball out from the back. He's decent in possession. He's got a good diagonal on him where he can step out and he can obviously play that pass. Why he's playing as a stopper in the middle and then you've got Dael Fry playing as the wide centre back, when last season it was Dael Fry that was in the middle and playing very, very well. I think last season our best performing defender, or one of them anyway. And I still think he's the best defender at the club, because the jury is still out on Lenihan, although I'm definitely warming to him a lot more. But I just felt that was very strange from Wilder. And then to take out somebody in Dijksteel who is very good and very well suited to being a wide centre back, and putting in Fry, it just didn't make sense to me. It really baffled me, the team selection. His situation at the moment is interesting because it's basically him and Lenihan vying for one position for me, which is in the middle. I don't have anything against Lenihan being in the middle, but when you've got Fry as the wide centre back, surely those should be switched. But his situation is interesting at the moment. In my personal opinion, he plays because, as I said, I think he's our best defender. But I don't know. It's very strange at the moment, isn't it? Because it seems like Wilder doesn't know his best 11, and that he's uprooting a lot of what was good last season in terms of personnel in the team. So hopefully he can just settle on a team at the moment, because I feel like there's too much chopping and changing at the moment. And last season we were so good at keeping an 11 when we could, and now it just seems like he's a bit confused and the team is playing like they're also confused. So yeah, it's strange with Fry, but I would have him in that team.
Tom, would you agree with that?
I'm not sure. I mean, after that performance yesterday from Lenihan, I think he got his head on absolutely everything. I've honestly lost count of the amount of headers that he won. And I do think he suits playing that central position. One of the kind of notes I had on the game was we played much better when McNair was right centre-back. So I think going forward, I'd like to see McNair right centre-back, if not him, Dijksteel. Because I think in the first half, we really struggled with bringing it out from the back on both sides as well. I don't think Fry suited to it, and I don't think Ball is suited to it either. And it was very kind of reminiscent of the Blackburn game for me last season. We just didn't seem to have a clue on where to play it out from the back, and there was a lot of safe passes back to Lenihan in the middle to kind of dictate it out to either sides, but it didn't get us anywhere. And you know, obviously Lenihan was on the other team last year, and it was Fry having to do the dictating which side it actually went out to. But it was so frustrating to watch.
Do you think there's a ceiling on Dael Fry a little bit, Tom? Because, like, you know, I think you're 20, 25, 26 now, Dael Fry. Look,
Younger than that, isn't he? I think he's like 24.
Is he 24? I'll have to double. Then you have to fact find for me. But
get on the Google now.
established in the team now. He's been on since 2016, 2017. And you know, I appreciate he's become like a mainstay in the sides. You know, teams have came in for him. Boro haven't sold. Are we at a point now where we have to think, can we get money for Dael Fry and sell him on and keep Lenihan in that position? Or would you rather just see him fight it out for that team, try and get that mainstay and see if he can progress further? Because how high is that ceiling for Dael Fry? Because he hasn't made that jump just yet.
I'd rather see him and Lenihan fighting it out for the centre spot. As I say, I don't think Fry particularly suits playing as a wide centre back. I think he has to be in the centre of the three. And like I say, I thought Lenihan was probably one of the only players who, you know, get a little bit of credit from me yesterday just for the amount of headers that he won in that centre back spot. But in terms of Dael Fry, I'd still like to keep hold of him. He's a very good player. I think he's proven that. He's very much like grown over the last couple of seasons. In terms of a ceiling, I would think he's still got growth potential at that centre back position. I do think in terms of that position, a lot of it's going to be based around reading the game. Obviously, Lenihan's got a few years head start on him there, but I don't think a lot of defenders really come into the prime until the late 20s or kind of early 30s from that ability to read the game. So I still think there's growing there for Fry to do. Hopefully, having Lenihan there to compete with could potentially help him there, and he can learn from that experience as well. But I don't think there's any kind of real urgency or rush to cash in on Fry right now, because he's far from the finished product.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I think when we're looking at things and assessing things now, obviously it's early doors. Boro obviously still in the market. We need probably the funds to do so as well. And I appreciate fans are going to probably say, well, we've got 30 million from Spence and Tav. But again, the operating losses that we were at over the last couple of seasons, the new model we're trying to drive, again, I could always look at the assets and say, well, what can we look to move on, or what can we look to do? I think if you're Chris Wilder now, you're looking at your back three and go, do I put McNair back in that left centre back role instead of Baller? Last year we were saying McNair could be a little bit slow on the transition side of things, but is that like the only negative that you've got, and there's a lot more positives? I think McNair's a bang average midfielder, but a really good defender. So for me, it's like she should probably stay there. Then do you keep Dijksteel there, or what do you do? Do you put someone else in there ahead of him? So you put Fry on that right
Craney.
Martin Craney, the Martin Craney regen and Tommy Smith. So, but it's an interesting thing, and we'll come on to it in a second when we talk about Boro's form in the season so far. But Tom, you were at the game yesterday. The long drive down to Reading at the Madstad. How would you assess things from your seat on the game yesterday?
I just thought it was a very poor performance and a step backwards from Stoke. Like I said, it reminded me of the Blackburn game last season, but also because it was a similar view as well. I think I was in like the fourth row. I was only a few rows up from where Yusuf is, if you can see him on the cameras after the goals. After the goal from Reading, but. Yeah, the defence looked too afraid to go forward in the first half. Too many safe passes across the back. Thought Reading really nullified us by sitting deep, and we made it quite easy for them in that respect as well. Second half was better with McNair at right centre back. I thought he did link up well with Crooks and Jones, but I thought we were constantly trying to overcomplicate things as well. I thought I was living in an IT Crowd episode, because it was a ludicrous display and we kept trying to walk it in. The only thing that was missing was Wilder bringing Walcott on too early. But there was one point in the second half right in front of me where we got a corner. McNair ran over, and Giles was already jogging over across the penalty area, and McNair just took it quickly to Jones. We ended up giving it away, and Lenihan was absolutely going spare at McNair for that. And I can understand why, when we had Lenihan who was winning everything in the air yesterday. We had Crooks in the box as well. And we took it short and, tried to, create that perfect angle for a cross when we could have just whipped it in from a corner. There was too many times on the right-hand side where we were waiting for a perfect passing move. We had McNair had the ball. Jones down the right-hand side would have been very easy for McNair to just play a ball out wide for Jones to run onto and get a cross in. And we just kept passing it around that triangle and looking for that perfect angle, that perfect run. And we need to really simplify that, I think. There was a couple of times late on where Jones had the ball and he didn't wait and he just took his man on. And he actually had success with those. So I think we need to try that more often. Like I say, we just need to simplify it rather than playing like we have all the time in the world at 1-0 down.
And for all that possession as well, what we had, what you've been mentioning there, Tom, it was 72%, in fact, 16 shots, but nothing. Then how did Boro come away with nothing?
Well, I mean, yeah, 16 shots, but I don't think there was a point where I was like, go on, like a high quality chance. They were all fairly low in terms of the XG. And it just felt like Reading know how to nullify us, because in the game last season at the Riverside where we snatched it at the end, they actually did really well to nullify Jones. They were doubling and tripling up on him, and then they tied at the end, and that's what kind of allowed Jones to then put that fantastic ball into the box for Crooks' header. But they just limited the space. They weren't aggressive in press against Jones. It was just limiting that space where you will see us operating those triangles and the off the ball movement, and it was just shutting off that completely. And then they compacted the middle as well, and I think they knew that we weren't going to hurt them in the middle, because I certainly don't expect, I know it was a fantastic pass from McNair to Jones for the goal against Sheffield United, but I certainly don't expect that from him. I don't expect a defence splitting ball, don't expect that from Howson. I kind of expect that level of creativity from Riley McGree, but he's just not been on it of late. So they were nullifying us out wide, blocking that space, and we had no answer to it at all. And I don't know what was going on with us, really. It was like we were stuck in the upside down, like Will's in the walls, and I don't know, Max is there, and we just need Kate Bush to bail us out or something, because it was just so weird the way that we were just passing the ball around with no conviction. And it's funny because Russell Martin would be proud of that, and we play Swansea next, and their fans have all been up in arms about the lack of real, as I said, conviction and guile to their passing. Yeah, and it's kind of like what we were doing yesterday. It was baffling to watch, and I just looked at my dad at one point and I just shook my head thinking, what am I actually watching here? It was just, we weren't doing anything. We just had all the ball and we weren't doing anything with it. There was a point in the second half where Ryan Giles got the ball and I was like, oh, so Ryan Giles is in the game. I just forgot he was there. And it was just, yeah, it was poor. And what summed it up was when Howson went to take that corner. And then it was like, if there could be a foul corner, that would be it. It was what happened. He went to play the ball, then didn't get anywhere near enough on it, then tried to wait for Giles to come over, but it was too far away. So it was just a mess.
That was over the other side of the ground from me, and it just looked like he tripped over the ball. Like,
I
had absolutely no idea what had happened.
He kicks the corner flag, and then obviously the ball rolls forwards, and then he looks at Giles, and then he's like, "Well, you're gonna get it," and he's like, "Well, no." But I feel like if there's like two things that sum up the game yesterday, was that like the photo of Bowser where his head's in his hands, and that corner, probably, I think that highlighted everything that we needed to know about that performance yesterday. And I think there's a photo of Muniz as well, who does exactly the same thing. So I mean, he's probably thinking, what on earth have I just signed for you? But I'm assuming, Dana, that just pretty much highlighted all of our weaknesses. A team that's in a very very low compact block, making it really difficult. The space was limited, and that's how if you're off your tempo, that is exactly what can happen, and it really highlights Boro's weakness when they're off the boil.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think I could take a single positive from that game yesterday. I'd love to come on here and say that there was a positive, but I don't think there was one. And it was weird because I was talking to Flo, who's I think we've got him to support Middlesbrough now. He's an 1860 fan. He watches the games every now and again. And he said the build up to the goal against Stoke, he made a point about it being the build up play being too slow. And I was thinking, what you had about we scored? But then literally everything that he was talking about was a problem for us against Reading. It was just so slow and pedestrian. You're thinking, right, we need that pass to quicken the tempo. We need to switch it out wide. We need some invention, some inspiration. We didn't have that. And I'm looking at players like Riley McGree to offer us that, and he didn't. And then what more comes on? He can't make the ball stick. Force was pretty much anonymous by that one run in the first half. It's just very discombobulated in that Middlesbrough team right now. You think about that Preston game that ended the season last campaign, when we got tonked 4-1, by the way, in case anybody's forgot. But it felt like now we're further away to being an established and complete team as we were then. And that's fine, because by default, I mean, we've gotten rid of loan players and sold our best player in Tav. Just put that out there. But it feels like even the components that were good last season aren't so much this. The midfield being a prime example of that. Our midfield has gone from being one of the best parts of the team to being one of the weakest and most vulnerable. The only major improvement I've seen is that obviously the left-hand side with Ryan Giles. And it's early days. Of course, it's early days. I can't stress that enough. But yeah, it was a worry yesterday. It has to be said. I can't come on here and say that it wasn't, because the performance was really, really, really poor from Boro.
Okay, then. Tom, probably the final question on Reading. Was the first look of Matthew Hoppe following his move from Mallorca. Was there any initial thoughts from you from the stands, because he did that lovely flick when he first came on, and then it just felt like we saw the good, and then also the very rawness of Boro's new centre forward.
Yeah, I mean, he looked bright when he came on. Had some good runs. That flick, as you just mentioned, I thought he had a good touch and decent passing. The only thing is, he doesn't look like a natural finisher. I think the overall consensus in the stands and everyone around me was that he kind of takes too long to get a shot off. There was a chance where it was pulled back to him by Giles, I believe it was. He took a touch, looked up, shot, but by the time he'd done all that, about 4 people had jumped in the way of the shot, and there was absolutely nowhere to get a shot off. There was a bit later on where, similar situation, the ball had come to him off a scramble and he just kind of shot it straight into a Reading defender. So I think other than that, I mean, he did look bright and, left-footed as well. So kind of does solve a kind of balance issue on that left side of being up of the striker partnership. Pressed well, and he was getting in the Reading players' faces as well, which we were told to expect from him. It just seems kind of very, very raw at the moment, and does need to work on the confidence around his finishing, I think, and being able to hit things first time, because you're not going to have that amount of time to take a touch, take a look up, and figure out where you want to slot it when there's 5 players trying to close you down inside the 6-yard box.
Okay, then. But there'll be more about Matthew Hoppy in the coming weeks. So it was a very small sample size, but we'll see more of him in a few weeks. But let's move on to the praise and place then, because the praise and place is the place we give a praise to a fan. Chips and gravy, the Parmo I had last night, which was absolutely banging, and much, much more. Guys, look, I know it was a difficult week, but we have to have a bit of positivity here and there. But who gets your nomination this week, if there is anyone? Tom, do you want to? I'll stay with you. Is there any positives that you want to take?
No, not really. You know what?
Let's move on.
If I'm giving praise and place to anyone, it'll be the fans that turned up to Stoke and turned up to Reading yesterday, especially Reading yesterday. Long drive down there from Boro, and unlike the team, at least the fans turned up.
Okay, then. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes, and just like Tom's just on fire. Then is Tom? Then is there anyone that wants to be in your praise and place?
I'm going to go for Duncan Watmore, because we said on this podcast that it's probably time to move Duncan Watmore on, and I still kind of feel like that. But he played well against Stoke, and I was really disappointed he didn't get that second goal. I mean, for God's sake, Phil Jagielka, it was literally his birthday. Can he not just gift... it was Phil Jagielka's birthday, of course. Can he not just gift that back to Duncan Watmore? Because it was a great run, by the way. If anyone's watched the goal back, which I'm sure we have, if you watch Duncan Watmore's run, it's just really simple, but he gets... he gets at the near post in front of Phil Jagielka, and he makes that happen. So that was fantastic from Duncan Watmore. Great industry, really great work. Dare I say, what more could you want? I think it was a good performance from him, and I think he deserves some praise this week.
Okay, I can echo that on Watmore. I think for the Stoke performance, absolutely. Ryan Giles would always get a mention for his performance. Isaiah Jones played well on Wednesday night, and there is positives, I think, from the week in general. Like the Stoke performance, like I've mentioned at the start of the show, was really, really good. Just poor at the end. That 1% difference each week, we just need to improve on it. But I think we'll get it right. So if I have to nominate someone, I'll probably be Watmore to go from that. But I kind of want to talk about Boro's form, because it's no wins in 5, obviously, and we're second bottom now. If you want to stretch that back further, we had a tweet as well from Joseph Dredge, and he said it's 2 wins in 14 in all competitions. Where do we go from here, essentially? And I want to get your thoughts on it, because it's so early in the season, of course, and there is concern online, and there always is. It's the highs and lows of social media and that emotional thoughts of it. But is there a cause of concern, Tom, about Boro's form so far?
Yeah, I would say a little bit. I mean, I'm not panic stations yet at the moment. There's 41 games left to go. It's a very long season. Things are going to change. But I just feel like we need that win to lift confidence. And I think it has to come against Swansea. I don't think we can go into the games against Watford and Sunderland having not won, especially the one against Sunderland, because, the pressure will be much higher in that point, and that'll suddenly turn into a derby again if they win. So, yes, yesterday was the type of game we should be winning, and we didn't turn up. But, we need to be beating Swansea. We need to lift the performance levels and get a win to get us off the mark, get confidence up, and if we get one win, I'm sure more will follow.
How can we improve things, Dana? Like, obviously the form might be a concern for you. I want to hear your opinion on that. But how can things be improved as well?
I think we should just revert back to what was a winning formula for us last season. We've got Rodrigo Muniz in now, 3-5-2, put Paddy at left centre-back, Dijksteel right centre-back, either Lenihan or Fry in the middle. And obviously, Crux's season has, in terms of performances, some people have criticised him. I just think go back to what we know from last season, go back to what worked well, and then try to kind of fill in the holes. We just keep kind of changing things. And if we just go back to what was good last season and then adopt it to the 2022-23 version, then hopefully we could get a result. But I also think that we've got another question on this. Key mistakes, we need to eradicate them because it's problematic at this point.
Yeah, I think we can resolve that in the transfer window as well. I think centre defensive midfield is a big position for us. It might be like an unpopular opinion. I think we need that replacement for Howson. When Howson doesn't play well or is slow in possession, we're very slow off the back of that. We have to be much quicker in our dictation of play, and I think Howson is very key to that. We've seen teams put a couple of people on Howson or try to press him quite early, and that forces Boro to be a little bit slower in the build-up play. I thought Josh Cullen would be a perfect signing for us this summer, but obviously he's went to Burnley, and I think that's natural. I think obviously I watched a lot of Josh Cullen last year with Anderlecht, and it's just a shame to see him do quite well for Burnley, but it shows that how key a defensive midfielder can be. I think Howson is good, but mid-30s now, we have to look past Johnny Howson and try to get someone in for when Howson has a bad game. Can we bring someone in to try and speed the tempo up a little bit faster? And Adam Forshaw would have been perfect probably for that type of role at times, but it's an interesting position for Boro at the moment. I think we have to try and resolve things fairly quickly. I agree with you, Dana, on the centre-back roles and trying to put things back to normal. I think we need to go on the market again for that centre-mid role, and then also probably maybe another striker, but I think we can come on to that in our lowdown video, really, which will be released in the next couple of days, and I want to come on to Muniz in a second. But a lot of strikers, we need to probably get rid of a couple, and also we need to make sure that the strikers we're bringing in are going to hit the ground running fairly quickly. So there's a lot of things at play, but it's not fundamental massive issues. There's small issues that could be resolved fairly quickly. I mean, unless it's transfers, and we take an absolute age to do so. But most of the time on the training ground, I think we can fix quite a lot of the stuff we're doing. But speaking of transfers, Rodrigo Muniz, season-long loan, was announced on Sunday. The Brazilian took the number 9 shirt, and a big shirt indeed, because Boro always have a free-flowing goal-scoring number 9. Dates back to Bernie Slaven, who was probably number 7, I think. But we're going to do a lowdown video on this, and it's going to be released on Monday. But what's your initial thoughts, Dana, on Rodrigo Muniz? Do you think it's a good signing for Boro? Do you think it'll give us more of a clinical edge?
I've no clue, to be honest with you. I think Muniz follows a bit of a trend of the signings that we've got. It's very intriguing how they'll do, because none of them have really been established first-team strikers and have had that regular starting place for the clubs that they've been at. So I think it's one of intrigue more than excitement. But Boro have been chasing Rodrigo Muniz for 12 months now, so probably longer actually. So hopefully the scouts have got this one right. There's no doubt that he's got potential, but I think it's a big we will see with Rodrigo Muniz. I'm hoping that he can do the business for us. It's all that he really needs to do. He needs to be enough, I think, because we'll have enough strikers to share the goals around. He just needs to do enough, and hopefully he can.
Yeah, if it stays the same, it's Muniz, Force, Hoppy, Akpom, Watmore, Coburn, and I feel like that's the six, right?
I think
that's the
I
six.
think that's it.
the
Yeah,
six.
I think that's it.
I feel there'll be someone else where a Kavanagh. There you go. That's
Finch.
7. Finch,
Finch,
8.
yeah.
There we go. Tom can play centre forward next week. Hold the ball up. Tom, what's your thought?
I'm too ouchy for that formation, mate.
Yeah, you won't fit. You won't fit. But what's your thoughts, Tom? Have you got any initial thoughts on the deal? Appreciate we are going to do more in depth, of course, but
kind of a little bit similar to Dana. I kind of feel positive about it. Small sample size from last season. I think the worry is when you sign a player from a foreign league is how are they going to adapt in the Championship. But to be fair to him, he did get a few decent goals for Fulham last season, despite being Mitrovic's backup. So I think he clearly has the ability to do well in this league. We just need to provide him with the chances. Fulham were a very attacking, decent team last season. High amount of chances created. I think up until yesterday we had the highest XG in the league. Don't know if that's still the case, but it's clear that we do create chances. So we just need to get the ball in the right positions for him. I'm sure he can stick him in the back of the net.
Okay, then. Well, let's move on to questions then, because each week you can send us a question via Twitter, the email at theborobreakdown@hotmail.com, or you can do it via our Telegram chat where we've got over 270 Boro fans in there talking nothing about Boro. It's just everything but there is some Boro chat in there once in a while, and it's absolutely carnage. But the first question we've got this week is from Twitter. It's from Twitter, and it's from Simon. And he says, after the first 5 games, how many points did you realistically think we would have? Dana, I think let's hear all of our opinions on this one. Dana, how many points do you think we were going to have?
10, in all honesty. And I know there's only one team that are on 10 points, and that's Sheffield United. But I probably was expecting a draw against West Brom. Then I think I predicted 2-1 against QPR. Sheffield United, I wasn't expecting too much. Stoke, I mean, they're in woeful. I think they're in a woeful moment at the moment. There's a lot of toxicity behind the scenes. In the stands. That's obviously reflected with the results on the pitch. They're not getting anywhere near what they should with the squad that they've got. And then against Reading, I think this week I expected us to get 6 points, and it just hasn't. Maybe that's just me being naive. Maybe I should change my expectations. Maybe I thought more of this team than what I should, but I was expecting us to be up there. I think it was a bit of a mixed start. So obviously Sheffield United a good team. West Brom have the ability to be a good team, but I just 10 points I was thinking, and obviously we've got 2,
3.
Have we got to 3? 3
points.
Get in. We've upped a point from what I initially thought just then. So yeah, we'll get in. We're going up.
The boy. Tom, how many points do you think we should have
had? 12. Honestly, I expected us to win both our home games. I always kind of look at us playing at home, and especially since Wilder came in, not so much towards the end of the back end of last season with the Hull and Huddersfield results, but even so, still went into those games thinking we'd win them. I'd just go into our home games expecting us to win. So against West Brom and Sheffield United, even though in hindsight, looking at the strength of those two teams, a draw's a acceptable result. I still expect us to win those, and it'd be a very hard away game against both of them. I never expect us to win against QPR away. I just always have an awful feeling about that ground. So, don't ever expect us to get anything. But against Stoke and Reading, I'd fully expect us to win both of them. I think we obviously should have beaten Stoke. And looking at the league table, I'm really surprised at where Reading are at the moment. That they're in the playoff places. Obviously, it's still early days, but they do seem to be kind of overachieving. Which, considering the 4-0 loss to Rotherham last weekend and all the Lumley highlights, I was very kind of shocked to see the table and where they were. But yeah, after Stoke, I fully expect us to beat them as well.
Okay, then. I was going to say about 7 to 9. Really, I don't know. I think it was. I was always expecting like a steady start, but probably not as bad as what it has been. But again, it's like kind of the things where like West Brom should have put the game to bed. We didn't, and got punished for it. QPR, we didn't start. We had a massive chance for Watmore against Sheffield United. Could have won that one. We fell asleep at the key moment of the Stoke game. We didn't get started against Reading, a game where we should have probably won. We shouldn't have really conceded, really, given how low of a block Reading had. So there's little moments that just haven't went Boro's way, really. But again, we've been punished for them, and rightly so. Really, this is the standard that you're playing at the Championship. You don't show up, you don't get the result, and we just haven't done it. So I kind of think 7 to 9 points would have been fair, but I wasn't expecting us to be on 3. But Dana, the question perfect for you here. It's from Phil, and he says, "Have we realistically replaced Tav,
No,
and will we?"
no.
Okay, moving on.
I think just expanding on that though, there was a Premier League club, and I'm not going to mention the player because every time there's like 2 players of the same breadth, people always assume that that they're being compared together. But the situations I'm comparing here, where they sold him, they replaced him with I think 3 players, and I feel like that's what Boro need to do, not necessarily with 3 players, but with 2, and I think that's what we're seeing with Moore and McGree, and we're not going to replace Tav in one player, I don't think, is basically my point. And I don't think Tav is the reason why Boro have had or not having Tav is the reason why Boro haven't had a great start to the season. But I certainly think he's been a little bit of a factor in certain moments, in certain games. And I think he will continue. It will continue to be a case of, we are missing Tav here.
Okay, the next question is from Jonathan, and he says, "Is a lack of striker the real problem?" Tom, is a lack of striker the real problem?
I think it can be definitely looked at that with some of the chances we created. Obviously, I know Watmore scored 2 midweek, but he has missed a few very good chances that we've created. And for me, he's not a striker. I think he when he was brought in, he played winger before, and for me, he's kind of winger converted to striker, and he's done well there. He's done everything that's been asked of him in the system, press as well. He's definitely a better winger turn striker than Onel Hernandez when Wilder first came in. So, but we do lack, some kind of conviction of putting it in the back of the net. I thought Force was going to be that. Akpom's done well as well. Obviously stuck around and deserved that. And also, Muniz coming in, hopefully that's going to help. But I think, it's quite well publicised that we're after 3 more signings, left-sided centre-back, midfielder and a striker. For me, a striker is now the lowest priority of the 3. Having got 2 out-and-out strikers in Force and Muniz, hopefully Hoppy can kick on and get, start kind of challenging in the team. Watmore, Akpom still have a part to play there. Obviously, if we do get a striker, I probably expect one to leave as well. But I think the problem areas on the pitch now are other places as well. So I think we need to prioritise left side of centre back and midfielder, and then come back to striker. It's probably going to be late in the window, and it'll probably be like Larson on deadline day or something. But I think we need to address the other areas first now.
Okay, then. Next 2 questions around Boro's defensive wars. Ed says, why are we so rubbish defensively? And Alexa says, why are we playing players out of position? Bowler can't play left centre-back. Fry shouldn't be playing right centre-back, or shouldn't have been asked to play right centre-back. McGree isn't a striker, and Watmore really can't play in a front 2. I think frustration is element to both of those. I think the defensive side of things, I think we've touched on it quite a lot in the pod today. Really, I think going back to basics, like we've mentioned, is probably going to be improvements, and also Boro switching off in key moments has been really key to Boro conceding goals. And then also the players playing players out of position. Bowler, I think, has done relatively okay at left centre back. I don't think he's done horrendous. It's okay, like not great, not horrendous, like awful.
Yeah, I agree.
And then Fry playing right centre back again. we can switch that out with Lenihan or we've put Dijksteel there, maybe put Fry as a stopper, and then McGree's playing more of a flowing role in that number 10 role. That's what you kind of want, because if he floats around and causes problems by coming to the ball, it should be bouncing off him most of the time, or he should be getting in and around the back line. He didn't do that yesterday, and hence why he looked really ineffective. And then Watmore, Watmore's a bit of a conundrum, really, isn't he? I think sometimes he has unbelievable moments, he has horrendous moments, and I think he can play in a front two. It's just finding the right person to play in the two with him, and it's also managing his game time as well. But go on, Dana, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say something about being bad defensively. Our XGA, our expected goals against per info goal, it's 5.5. Boro have conceded 9 goals, so we've conceded almost double the amount of our expected output. So for me, it's not a fundamental problem, it's mistakes. I'm thinking the first goal that we conceded, West Brom, McGree caught on his heels, Lenihan being aggressive, stepping out, getting caught behind on the counter. QPR, simple square ball from Jones that's just very poor, intercepted, get caught on the counter again, mistake from Stefan, poor marking from the corners. Sanderberg's goal, yeah, fair enough, we could have probably closed him down a little bit better against Sheffield United. Then we score for them, and then Stoke, obviously the first goal shouldn't have counted because it was a foul, and then the equaliser is just, again, poor lapse of concentration, poor marking even, and the goal yesterday, it's a poor defensive clearance, poor defensive header from Bowler, and then you kind of say, yeah, fair play, fantastic strike from Fauna, but there's just really, like I said earlier, the 1% moments that count the most defensively, Boro just not getting right at the moment, and I'm hoping that can be a case of it's just eradicated as quickly as it possibly can be, and that eventually we'll kind of be excuse me, plain sailing a little bit more. But at the moment, it's just defensive mistake after defensive mistake, and it's really infuriating.
You can't manage like simple mistakes like that, can you? In the game, it's very difficult for a manager to do so, but it's what the players have been doing, and I think you spot on, D, to be honest. Next question. I absolutely love this Twitter handle. It's Carlos de Punna. It's just proper got me. To be honest, I was quite crazy when I found it. But why has Wilder seemingly based his team on possession rather than turnarounds and counters, not showing any of the qualities his United team did? His United team had probably more of a counter-attacking element to them in comparison to Boro, but a team that plays a lot more possession sometimes hides the weaknesses that it could potentially have defensively, which I think is why Boro probably been more dominant in the possession world than they should be. I think that it's not necessarily a bad thing. You got to go in as a manager, chop and change and play a way that suits the players that you've got, rather than comparing a Sheffield United side who had one set of players to a Boro team that has a completely different skill sets and strengths. So I think you've got to adapt that as a manager anyway. In terms of qualities,
do we have the players to play on the counter though? Because we don't have a ball carrier in midfield now that we don't have Tav. And I'd say, yeah, Jones and Giles are relatively quick, but they're possession-based players. And when we broke Giles down, it was a case of, we have to have possession. Otherwise, if we get counted on, or if, for example, you've got a situation where Giles has to defend, it's not his strength, it's not his core strength. So do we have the players to counter is probably my question in response to that.
I don't think we do. Like I think Wilder coming into the team, we all said when Warnock was still in charge last year, the players that we have are more technically suited to a better system than what Warnock was playing. And I think Wilder's just kind of having to play to their strengths, and I think their strengths are a position-based system. I'm probably one of the worst people to talk about Sheffield United when they won promotion, because I didn't watch a whole lot of them other than when we played them. But I think at the moment it is what it is in terms of the strengths of our players. I think Sheffield United might have been more suited to that counter-attacking system, but we're probably more suited to possession, but within the same kind of system.
I think we've got to mitigate risk, to be honest. Mitigate risk and play to the strengths of Giles and and Jones, really. Like I was saying, like Giles is defensively could still do a lot of work to improve on it.
And
I
same
feel
with
like
Jones as well.
and the same with Jones as well. So I think the reason why we get caught at times is because we advance our fullback so much and try to have like more of like a cover of the pitch, and we were so spread out at times. We do have a lot of space in certain areas of the pitch where a team can manipulate that quite well, especially if you're a good counter-attacking team with pace. I think that's where we're going wrong at times. But again, like I think to get the best out of the players that sometimes we've got within Giles and Jones, it's really key that we do keep possession. But I also come back to that centre defensive midfield role. Someone who can really pick up a pass and get Boro moving fairly quickly is really vital to probably that. And that kind of comes with cover for Howson and trying to battle that position, because there's going to be a time where Howson might get injured or whatever, and we need someone to occupy that role fairly well. I don't think McNair fits that role. I think Dyke still potentially does. But I think we just need something a bit different, or something that was a bit more possession savvy in those moments to help progress Boro further if we were to continue that system. Last question, it's from Ty, and he says, how important is the last few days of the window after the performances this week? Tom, how, on a scale of not important and very important, how important is it?
Very important. I think, as I said earlier, we've got two positions where I think we desperately need to address them. And just to kind of touch on something you just said there about, Giles and Jones leaving a lot of space, I think a left-sided centre-back, it's kind of joint top priority with someone else in midfield. Because, as you said, Bowler will do okay at left centre-back. I think we're all very aware he's covering that position at the moment. It's not his natural position. I think in terms of a positional sense and being willing to kind of get stuck into a tackle, I don't think he's that. But I think we sign a natural left-sided centre-back that can help cover the space Giles leaves quite effectively, especially if someone who's quite kind of aggressive and will get stuck into a tackle to win the ball back. Same with midfielders. Say if Howson needs a couple of games off, or isn't playing on form, we need someone in there to replace him with and up the tempo in midfield. So I'd say those are two important areas that we need to address, and I think as soon as we address them, we go in for a striker as well. But I kind of think now that we're down to 3 signings left, this might be the time where we see some kind of more marquee signings and spending more money than we have been. I'm not saying we're going to go kind of crazy and spend 15 million on a striker, because we've all seen how that ends up before. But I think these are probably the most important positions that we needed to address. We obviously got quite a lot in terms of incoming transfer revenue. Don't expect us to spend it all, but I do think we will spend more than we have been. But I still think we'll be clever about it.
Okay, then. Well, let's look ahead to Swansea now then. Boro welcome Swansea to the Riverside next Saturday. The Swans are sitting 19th in the Championship table with 1 win and 5, and are coming off a 2-0 home defeat to Luton. But to understand how things are looking in South West Wales, we spoke to Matt from the excellent ForseeaBall Twitter page to get some analysis on Swansea this season.
Hi, it's Matthew from ForseeaBall on Twitter here. After the initial optimism following a full pre-season under Russell Martin, poor results and performances early on have squashed any initial hopes that we'd be competing in the top end of the Championship. It looked against Blackpool following a late win, and then 90 minutes against Millwall were excellent that we turned a corner, but obviously this followed with 2 own goals in added time, which alarmingly was the 4th time in 10 games a 2+ goal lead has been thrown away in the latter stages of a game, showing a soft underbelly to the squad. And even if we take the lead against Middlesbrough on Saturday, I wouldn't lose hope whatsoever, as we've shown constantly being unable to hold a lead. And then we followed this capitulation against Millwall with a very poor performance against Luton, which has led to some fans calling for Russell Martin to be sacked, but this is far too premature at this stage. So far we've signed 4 players, Harry Darling being the pick of the bunch as expected for 1.4 million. He looks very, very good on the left, constructing attacks from the back. He obviously scored that excellent goal against Rotherham on the opening day and leads Championship players for progressive runs from the back. Joe Allen has returned to the club after 10 years and has looked good in his early games and shown grit unlike a lot of the other players, but he's just back from a long-term injury and needs to be carefully managed. Matthew Sarnola was brought in from Belgium after playing under Russell Martin and MK Dons a couple of years ago, but having not played much football in the last year, he looks well off the pace and seems to lack confidence at the moment, leading to a lot of Swansea fans to write him off after just 5 games, but I definitely give him time. Nathan Wood obviously was signed from Middlesbrough and he's had a bit of a mixed start, to be fair. He's got caught out on the ball a couple of times and did score. He was one of the players who scored an own goal against Millwall, but for £400,000 looks a useful squad player and prospect. One to watch out for on Saturday is academy graduate Cameron Congreve. The 19-year-old has looked very lively in his cameo so far and could get a start against Middlesbrough given how poor we performed against Luton. Initially, I think most Swansea fans thought we'd be competing top 10, maybe top 6, but Russell Martin last night has said that we can't even afford loans, and given how threadbare our squad is, this raises a lot of concerns as to where we'll finish in the table. We've poor depth pretty much across the board, to be fair, and we're playing square pegs and round holes. For example, starting the season, we played Joe Latabodier, a centre-back by trade, as a right wing-back, and in a Russell Martin system, right wing backs are key to starting attacks. Well, both wing backs are key to starting attacks and are often one of the highest players on the field, and we had a centre back playing there. But he has since dislocated his shoulder and is out for 4 months. And following talks with the owners, Russell has said they're not willing to sanction any replacement deal, which again raises more concerns. And then you have Joel Perot, who could easily leave if a bid, probably more than £10 million, after initially wanting 15-20, comes to the table. And then we lose most of our goals. So at the moment it's quite unknown as to how we'll finish, but I think most Swansea fans would take an improvement on 15th from last year. On Saturday, despite Middlesbrough starting poor results wise, they actually lead the expected goals table, and given the feeling around Swansea at the moment, I would definitely back a Middlesbrough win. I think Ryan Giles will have an easy game given Swansea are poor down the right hand side, and I think it'll be quite comfortable throughout the game for Middlesbrough, especially off the ball. We're fairly uncreative and poor at defending transitions. So I'm going to go 2-0 Middlesbrough, and even if Swansea do take the lead, don't be concerned because we'll probably throw it away.
Matt, following a really good tradition on this podcast by saying the team is absolutely horrendous and they're going to probably beat us about 5-0 now. So thank you for that. Thank you for that, Matt. But no, really, really good analysis there, and it's a really good Twitter page as well. So if you can give them a follow, or if you haven't already, please do. Really good stuff from them. But guys, they weren't particularly, thinking that they're going to get something at the weekend. But are we going to get something at the weekend? How do you think we're going to do in terms of predictions? Dana, what's your prediction?
Oh, this is bold, I'm going to go for 3-0 Boro because I think it has to click eventually. And what better time for it to click than in front of the Boro fans? Surely one afternoon, one evening, it's all going to come together. And I think what Matt was saying there, very kind of downhearted about the way that Swansea are playing. They're a very topsy-turvy team, so they could easily beat us 3-0, to be honest. But I think for me, after the disappointment of the Reading game, I think we'll beat them and beat them comfortably. So, yeah, 3-0.
3-0. Tom?
I hope that God Dana's right there.
Same.
I've got 2-1 Boro just because I can't see where a clean sheet's going to come from at the moment. I think there's always like that one defensive error that we'll make, and Swansea will probably score first as well. But like I say, I always expect us to win our home matches. So yeah, 2-1 Boro.
Okay, then. Do you think we'll see any changes at all to the team? Tom?
I hope so. I want to see similar changes to what Dana said earlier. I want to see Dijksteel back at right centre back. I want to see McNair at left centre back until we sign a natural left centre back. Because, like I said earlier, I don't think playing Fry at right centre back and Bowler at left centre back's the answer, because neither of them can play out from the back as well as Dijksteel and McNair can. Also, I think it should be back to a 2 up front, and I would go with Muniz and Force for that front two.
Okay, Dana?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think
Agree.
Muniz is the sort of what we've sort of seen from Fulham fans so far is that he is a bit physical and that he can definitely make the ball stick. That could be a really good partner to Force, who we know is not so much involved in the build-up play as he is in the 6-yard box. So yeah, I think that would be what I would go for. And then Crooks and McGree in the middle with Howson, obviously forming the end part of that triangle in the middle.
Okay, then I'm going to go prediction-wise 2-1 Boro. I agree with you both and the changes that we'll see at the weekend. And finally, just the average possession for Swansea, Tom, is 67%. We've had a question earlier saying, can Boro be a counter-attacking team? Is this a good time to prove it?
Well, I wouldn't want to kind of see that happen playing at home. I think that kind of gives them too much to work with. But I think it's going to be a similar game to last season. I thought it was a very difficult game for both teams last season in terms of both of them wanting to keep possession. I think we're just going to need to press well and cut the passing lanes. And I'd like to see Muniz and Force putting a lot of pressure on their back line. It's quite young. Got like Nathan Wood there. I think you put the pressure on them early on, force them into mistakes, and I think that's the way to stop them from playing out from the back, and give us the ball to have more emphasis on our attack.
I think with Swansea, you need to turn them over quickly. You need to get them in behind, because last season that was a really big part of teams trying to counter what they can give you. And I think if we win the ball back and then quickly spring, I think that would be good. But then a quick revision to what I said just there, I'd like Morton instead of McGree. So yeah, I think get them in behind and hopefully we can get that 3-0 victory that I am so desperate for.
Yeah, it's all about pressing the 4, isn't it? The 4 and the centre backs on that initial that building phase. I think once you stop them in that building phase, I think it's going to be a reasonably good afternoon. I think as you let them progress through like the thirds, that's where like you start to get like pegged back a little bit, and that's where it'll be difficult for Boro probably at the weekend. But I think all in all, I think we've got enough. I think we have to. Like you've said that we have to click this time. Then there might be a little bit more concern if we don't get the result. But yeah, it's a big game, I think, Saturday for us, just to hopefully kickstart our season. But guys, thank you very much for joining me as always. And to listeners and the viewers, thank you very much for watching us on YouTube or on your podcast provider, and rating us 5-star and subscribing to our YouTube channel as well. We've got a lot more content coming out over the next few days as we approach the end of the transfer window. But for right now, there's 41 games to go, and there's a big game coming up and signings on the horizon. Hopefully, it'll all be sunny in Middlesbrough soon. But this has been the Boro Breakdown podcast, and that was all your Boro Matchday chatter in a pod. Up the Boro Breakdown.